Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Pop Go the Writers. Jim appears to have been replaced by Slimer.
He's not called Slimer in the movies, so I push back on calling it that.
What's he called in the movies?
He's not. He's literally, whatever that is, whatever something Romer or whatever the technical term is, but they don't call him that in the movies. I've always hated that name, and I don't like the character very much either. But I do like the merchandise.
I've noticed. So you've seen the movie?
Yes, I have. I've seen the movie. And here's what I say. Don't listen to the critics.
What are the critics saying?
The critics are saying it's terrible. It raped my childhood and it's the worst thing. It killed the franchise.
Okay.
Yeah. You know what? It's a fun movie to me. It's about equal to Afterlife, and I loved Afterlife, and I really enjoyed this one. This one might even have a little edge up for me personally because the movie, the Ghostbusters, they're back in New York City, and to me that's where Ghostbusters should be. Even as much as I enjoyed Afterlife, and I think like the original guys have a bigger part in this than they did in Afterlife, especially Dan Aykroyd. Dan Aykroyd is throughout like the entire movie, and has a lot to do. After that would be Ernie Hudson, Bill Murray, not as much as those guys, but still a significant part in the whole thing. So yeah, I really enjoyed it, and it'll be really interesting to see if they do another one after this.
Yeah. It did top the box office for this week.
Okay, good. That's
but
good.
It's going to be hard pressed to stay up there with Godzilla versus Kong, something Kingdom coming out.
Yeah. New Empire, yeah.
Yeah, that comes out this weekend coming out.
The only thing I have to say is Patton Oswalt does not need to be in every other movie ever made these days. And then the other guy too, the guy he was in Eternals, the Indian guy.
Oh, Kamal Najani.
Yeah, he's like in every other movie now.
Well, I think both Patton and Kamal's accountants would disagree with you.
I think so. I think so too, and their agents, and yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Although he has a significant role in the movie enough where if they made a sequel, I could see him being in it. Oh, here's a fun little thing. Not only is there the guy that played Walter Peck in the 1984 movie is in this.
Okay.
There's yet another person who was in the original Ghostbusters, and it wasn't publicized, and it's just a tiny little cameo, but there's another person that's in the original. And of course Annie Potts is back. Yay.
Yeah. And I hear suits up for the first time.
Yes, yeah. And you know what? That's a little bit of a shame because she doesn't really get to do much once she does suit up. I was hoping for a little bit more, but I love her, and I'm so glad she's in it.
Well, I haven't had a chance to see it, but I haven't seen Afterlife either.
Oh, okay.
It's not available on any normal streaming service.
Oh, is that right? Huh.
Yeah, I've been looking for it, and I want to watch it, but...
Well, let's see. What company makes these? Is it
Sony? Yeah.
Well, where do Sony movies usually end up?
They make deals with different companies.
Okay. Wow. That's weird in this day and age.
You would think with a sequel coming out, they'd want it to be somewhere easily accessible.
Yeah. Huh.
And it hasn't been. It hasn't hit a normal streaming service.
How weird. Huh.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can get it on Amazon, but you have to pay an extra. So,
wow. Who are you going to call, right?
Did you know, I found this out earlier today, that at one point they were looking to close Hook and Ladder 8, the actual firehouse that's being used in the movie. And it was, this was not that long ago. But one of the people that helped save it was Steve Buscemi.
Okay. Now I don't know if I heard that part of it, but yeah, I did hear that they wanted to close it down. Yeah.
Yeah, the previous Ed Koch, I think it was, or I don't remember all the names. But the super tall mayor that took over after him was one of the people fighting to keep it open. But Steve Buscemi would go down and join the rallies and the protests and stuff, because the original mayor was trying to do it quietly without saying which houses he was trying to get close. And that was one of them. But the reason Steve Buscemi wanted to keep it open is very different than you would think. It's not because he was a huge Ghostbusters fan, and it's not because he was in the movie or the franchise at any point. It's because Steve Buscemi used to be a fireman.
Okay, I love this story already.
And he worked out of Hook and Ladder 8 for a while.
Is that right?
Yes.
Wow.
Also, when 9/11 happened, Buscemi went down and volunteered as a fireman and worked the rubble and stuff during the cleanup. So
good reason. Well, that's funny because part of the, like the subplot of this new movie is that the mayor is trying to shut down that firehouse.
Probably where they got the idea from.
Yeah, truth is stranger than fiction or whatever.
Yep. Hey, Ed, good to see you. Thank you guys for tuning in. We started off talking about Ghostbusters because Jim had just seen it. Our main topic tonight is going to be Steve Ditko. Partly, we're going to talk about the recent announcement that he was going to be given the Disney Legend status or inducted into the Disney Legends. And we want to talk about how that might be the very last thing that Steve would ever have wanted. But we're going to talk about Steve, his falling out with Marvel and Stan, what caused it, stuff like that. We're going to have a pretty open conversation about Steve Ditko. If you guys don't know who Steve Ditko is, he's, of course, the co-creator of Spider-Man, the creator of Doctor Strange. He went over to Charlton, where he created The Question. He recreated the Blue Beetle, the Ted Kord version. Over at DC, he made the Creeper. He made Shade the Changing Man.
Hawk
and Dove.
Yep.
And then back at Marvel later on, he would come back and create Speedball, and then eventually Squirrel Girl.
Isn't that amazing?
Yep, kind of all over the place. He also created his main independent comic, Mr. A, which is basically a much more cruel and paranoid version of The Question, which seems kind of amazing, doesn't it? When you think about The Question.
Right.
Yeah. But before we get started, do me a favor, guys. Hit the like buttons down there. Hit the subscribe buttons, all that stuff. Jim and I do this every week. We talk about different topics. We're going to start doing less about all the different shows and stuff and more on single focused topics like Steve Ditko, or like last week, should Batman kill? And who Batman should kill should have been the subtopic. But
and how often should he kill them?
Yes. And how? Should he use guns? Should he use batarangs? Or should he just do his normal way of making them into Robin?
Or should he hire Mr. A to do it for him?
There you go. Ed is looks like a fan of The Question. The Question was so good. And of course, we also will probably bring up the fact that most of the Charlton characters were the subject that Alan Moore originally wrote about for The Watchmen. And when DC turned back and said, no, we just got these, we're not going to let you destroy them. That's where The Watchmen came from.
So who was the analog for The Question?
Rorschach.
Yes. Amazing, huh?
Rorschach's obvious. Owlman for Blue Beetle, Silk Spectre as is it Nightshade?
Yes. Hmm.
Um, Osmand, not Doctor Manhattan is Captain Atom,
Right.
but Ozymandias is the interesting one
Yep.
because that's
Thunderbolt.
Thunderbolt. Yeah,
Peter Cannon
Peter
Thunderbolt. Yeah.
Cannon Thunderbolt, which is interesting because DC owns all of those except Peter Cannon Thunderbolt,
Hmm.
which
Yep.
I believe is owned by Dynamite, or at least was last published by Dynamite.
It at one time was owned by his creator, Peter Morrissey, if I
Right.
remember correctly. And I love this story. At one point in the late 80s, I think it was, DC put out a Peter Cannon Thunderbolt comic book, and then it suddenly disappeared when they found out that they had no rights to do Peter Can. It just,
Yeah.
I mean, I bought the first issue because I was getting all of the, the stuff that they were doing with the Charlton characters when they started really getting into it, Captain Atom and Blue Beetle.
Mm-hmm.
And then they put that out, and it was like suddenly it was gone, and it was
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, we found out that we didn't really own that.
And by the way, we missed this one. The comedian in Watchmen, of course, is Peacemaker.
Yeah, how can we forget that? Jeez.
Yep. So I've always wanted someone to do the comics, or at least do like the famous panels from the Watchmen, but do them with the Charlton characters.
It would really be amazing. There is Moore's original pitch has been reprinted in maybe a couple different times. It is out there, but it's the pitch using all of those characters. I can't remember what he had called it, but that is out there if anybody's really interested. But yeah, it's amazing. It's almost like Kirby, like how Ditko's influence is sort of out there in many different ways.
Yeah. But yeah, we're gonna talk about that. I've got some funny thoughts on that, on Ditko and Kirby and their lack of credits on stuff, and the argument that against Stan Lee because of it, and I have thoughts on that, but I also grew up in the age of the bullpen where everybody loved each other. It was a big party, and you felt like you were part of it.
Yep.
And then suddenly all the real stories start coming out, and you don't want to hear that,
Sure.
So, just so we can hit anything otherwise, though, the Acolyte trailer came out. It's getting surprisingly a lot of negative reviews, but I think it's the same.
You're kidding me.
Yeah, I think it's the same source that a lot of female-led shows are being from, because it looked pretty good to me.
I saw a lot of positive stuff, right when it hit, and Disney claimed that it was it broke their own records for a trailer.
Yep. But yeah, it's getting a lot of negative backlash. But again, it's that same vocal minority,
Yeah, it just goes to show, Dan, and prove that for the section of Star Wars fans that say, we want something different, we want something different, we want something different, so they give them something very different, and we hate it. It looks terrible. Oh, here we go again. It, I mean, you can tell that it doesn't matter what they do. My opinion right now, as of today, is that these Star Wars fans would be happier if there was just no Star Wars content at all.
I think what they want is they want to feel like they're 9 years old again, watching it for the first time.
I certainly get that. I mean, that's what I'm looking for a lot of times, is to feel like I'm 12 years old, like when Star Wars came out. I totally get that. But we can't have Han and Leia and Luke movies anymore. It just doesn't work.
Well, it does work if you use different actors.
Yeah, but you know what? But then you have the whole segment of fandom that says, I'm so sick of the of the Skywalker saga. I'm so sick of the Rebellion era. We want something different. Okay, how about a movie that's around the New Republic era, or a TV show that's around the New Republic or the High Republic era?
Yeah.
Oh, well, that would suck. Yep. Yep.
Well, it's like all the people that came out and said Solo was horrible.
Mm-hmm.
But now they're all talking about the new stuff as being horrible. And they look back at Solo going, that wasn't that bad. Can we get some more of that?
Mm-hmm. I
We
think
still want that Lando series with
Glover.
Donald Glover.
Yeah.
We still want that. And,
Yeah.
that Aiden Ehrenreich, he wasn't as bad as we thought he was. Can we get more of that?
One of the interesting things that I saw a comment about the trailer, and this was from one of the review. I think it might have been Screen Crush. I can't remember, but they pointed out something really interesting, that with this, it's all new characters, all new everything or whatever. Like you'll never know if somebody's going to die. Like there's nobody. I mean,
Other than
your
Yoda.
character might not live through the whole thing.
Yeah, other than Yoda.
Other than Yoda, if Yoda's even in it.
Well, he's in the High Republic stories.
Yeah. Oh, sure. But yeah, it makes me wonder if they'll go so far as to, to have him in this. You would think.
I just want them to bring in Skier, who's the Trandoshan Jedi.
Oh, okay. I
love the idea of a Trandoshan Jedi.
I saw speculation that the Wookiee that we see in the trailer is the grown-up Wookiee from that little animated series that they have that's set during the High Republic era.
I've seen somewhere where the name of that Wookiee is, and I don't remember what it was. But it ends with an Aka.
Okay. So overall, what did you think of the trailer? I mean, is it, did you say like, yeah, I'll watch that?
Yeah, I'll give it a shot.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't grab me, but it didn't turn me off either.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, there's something going on here.
I was a little disappointed that Skeleton Crew didn't get up there first. That's what I was expecting. And somebody told me that have there been like some reshoots or something on Skeleton Crew?
But I think they're probably holding Skeleton Crew because it's going to tie in to what they're doing with Ahsoka and Mandalorian. It's supposed to be that same era.
Okay.
So.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
All right, we're going to mention one more thing, which I thought was interesting. And it's not so much a review of a trailer, but a name that got dropped in the trailer, which I thought was fascinating. Did you guys get a chance to see the Penguin trailer that dropped? This is the spin-off of the Batman movie.
Mm-hmm.
Colin Farrell as the Penguin.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're watching it, it feels like you're watching Scarface or The Sopranos.
Mm-hmm.
It really does have that vibe. But there is one point where Cobblepot is talking about a gangster from when he was a teenager and how he was respected in the area. And if he saw you, he would check in on you, see how you doing. And when he died of a heart attack, cigar still in his mouth, they had a parade for him. And they dropped the name of this guy as Rex Calabrese. Now, I'm at a point where I hear a name in a Marvel or DC trailer, I'm Googling.
Yeah, okay.
Rex Calabrese is a more recent character created in about 2014 by Scott Snyder and some other folks as part of Batman Eternal. And basically, it was discovered that he is the real biological father of Catwoman, of Selena Kyle, not Carmine Falcone. Calabrese was the original crime boss of Gotham until Falcone came along. He kind of faked his own death and took on the alias of Leo Leone. And at one point he ends up in prison. He was also known as the Lion, and he had this trademark of big silver teeth, and he would bite his enemies on the neck, ripping out their jugulars.
That part sounds a little familiar. I read Batman Eternal, but that's been like 10 years ago. So,
Yeah,
oh,
he was the one that was befriended Jim Gordon in prison.
okay. All I remember of Batman Eternal is that it was well named because it seemed to go on forever. It was a weekly series and it just went on and on and on and on.
Yeah.
And on. Wow.
So we'll have to see if the name dropped for no apparent reason, if they just took the name,
Yeah.
or if that's going to tie into the character of Selena Kyle, stuff like that.
Where does this Penguin series? When does this happen in relation to the
It takes
movie?
place days after the Batman movie.
Oh, wow.
Now you haven't seen the Batman, have you?
No, we talked about that last time, remember?
Right.
Yeah, no.
Gotham is left in a very precarious situation at the end.
Okay.
And there's some potential openings for a criminal with some desire to move up in the world.
Okay.
So that's kind of where the focus comes from. But I got to tell you, Colin Farrell's The Penguin is brilliant. You lose the fact that it's him.
I've heard that, yeah.
It's absolutely amazing. Hey, Mike, good to see you.
Was this planned all along, like to do
No,
this?
when Farrell got the job, he did not know there was going to be a series. There wasn't talk of one, but as he was doing the role, I think he had mentioned to Matt Reeves, he's like, I really would love to do more with this character. I love this, I'm really enjoying it, but I'm only getting like 5 or 6 scenes in the whole movie because he's, you got Falcone, you've got Selena Kyle, you've got the Riddler. It's not Penguin's movie, but he plays an important role.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of got Reeves started, going, I could do something with this guy. And I've got an actor willing to do it. So,
yeah.
Who's willing to go through all the makeup tests and stuff to end up looking like Richard Kind, which I think is hilarious.
How is Reeves involved?
He's producing, he's directing some of the episodes too.
Oh, okay. Okay. Writing?
I think he is as well, yeah.
Okay. All right. So very, 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 very much tied into the movie then.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, let's move on to our main topic, Steve Ditko. Now, there's a lot of stories about Steve, how he got started. Of course, he was in the military, like a lot of the artists from that era. When he got out, he used the GI Bill to go to school, actually trained under Jerry Robinson. He went to a art school for 2 years that was being taught by Jerry Robinson. When he got into comics, started making a name for himself, and then got not pneumonia, but tuberculosis, and was out of action for well over a year. He ended up going back to his home in Pennsylvania, living with his parents again until he got well.
Yeah.
There's a lot of interesting videos out there about him because for all intents and purposes, he was a recluse. He didn't want the spotlight. He avoided it. When Marvel did promotional stuff, he did his best to stay out of it. There's only a handful of pictures that exist of him. Maybe 10, 15 years ago, a British TV host named Jonathan Ross decided he wanted to find out all the story about Steve Ditko, and he did this documentary called In Search of Steve Ditko, and you can find it online. It's a really good documentary. He does locate him and goes to Steve Ditko's apartment/office with Neil Gaiman. The two of them together go. And what ends up happening is, and you can watch for yourself, but Steve will not do an interview. He will not go on camera. But he still invites them in, chats with them, and gives them free comics.
So I'm assuming that the cameras they had to stop right before they went into. Okay,
They had a
they
guy
couldn't
with
even do
them.
an audio of
They
it.
had a guy with him who was the cameraman. This was a high end. This wasn't just I'm
Yeah,
carrying my cell phone with me. This was
yeah, sure.
yeah. So and the cameraman had to wait outside down in the street, down on the street,
Okay, I'm
and
a
he
little,
lives in New York City.
I'm a little
So
surprised that Neil Gaiman went along with this. They had to know that Steve was not going to, do this and to go along with it. But I'm a little surprised with what I know about Neil that he would have felt that was the right thing to do to bug this guy,
yeah.
knowing that we knew for decades at that point that he was just not going to, do stuff like that.
Uh, but wait, not to stray off topic, but from the first show I watched, you look so familiar to me, but I couldn't place it. Then it dawned on me, you resemble Adam Savage from Mythbusters.
Yeah, thank you. That is the 1 millionth time that I've been told that.
Should get you a hat that hat he wears.
It's just so weird. I personally don't see it, but it's like we both wear glasses. I think that
We'll get to the hat. You put out a book called Bustin' Myths.
but I thank you. I appreciate that. It could be that he looks like me rather than the other way around.
Yeah.
Consider
Mike,
that.
if you're asking about Steve Ditko,
Yeah.
yeah, he is notoriously reclusive.
Yeah.
There's a recording called the Merry Marching Marvel Society.
I'm glad you brought this up.
Yeah, and all the Marvel people were supposed to be there. Jack Kirby showed up. Everybody recorded on this record except for Ditko, who refused. And they did this play on basically saying that he was out on the window ledge because he didn't want to be part of it.
Yeah. Yep.
So,
he did actually show up at the very first Marvel comic convention, or there was some. I hate to say I can't remember the full details of this. It was one of the earliest comic conventions.
yeah.
It might have been the one that they actually called the first Marvel one, and he did actually go to that, and he sat out in the audience. But I think he spoke up at one point, and he did talk with people, and then that was it. No one ever saw him ever at one, a show ever again. But he did. But he, it was like a rare sighting of the guy.
Yeah. So the reason we're talking about him tonight is that this notorious recluse is on the list of way too many names that Disney is going to be inducting into their Disney Legends.
Yeah.
And I say way too many names because if you pick 5 people to put in, that's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But that's manageable.
Mm-hmm.
They have, I think it's 20 some odd names.
It's a lot. Yeah. It's like a big block. I remember seeing it at first as a block of, photos, and Steve's right in the middle.
But you've also got James Cameron and Harrison Ford and John Williams and Frank Oz. And it's
so
why don't you save some of those?
Dan, how do you describe what the Disney Legends is?
How do I describe it?
Yeah, what's the official or what what is it exactly?
Yeah, I'd say I describe it as Disney trying to take credit for shit they didn't do.
Okay, well, folks, it was nice talking.
Well, come on.
I guess so. I don't really know. It's funny. They started the thing, and then I wasn't really even sure what it is. It's like a Hall of Fame, I guess you would want to call it, and they started putting people in it, and I guess that just to recognize their talents and their importance and things like that. And obviously, in the case of Steve, you can get in there posthumously,
It says Disney Legends is the Hall of Fame award that is awarded by the Walt Disney Company for individuals who have made significant impact on the Disney legacy. Now, again, Marvel isn't Disney's legacy. They bought Marvel,
Yeah.
but you don't suddenly earn that legacy.
Yeah, it's true. And Star Wars people are in it, and yet
Yeah,
it's anything that they own, any company that they own, that's
yeah.
yeah.
Now, the award is given in three elements or three categories. There's the Spiral Award, which stands for imagination and the power of the idea. Oh no, this is how is this? What the fuck is this? I'm cursing tonight. I don't know why. Um,
There goes our all ages tag right out the
oh,
window.
the actual award is this like book with a hand sticking up, holding a wand with a star at the top. And the spiral is supposed to stand for imagination, the power of the idea. The hand holds the gift of skill, discipline, and craftsmanship, while the wand and star represent the magic, the spark that is ignited when the imagination skill combined to create new dreams. My God.
That's a mouthful.
Yeah.
Okay,
Anyway,
here's a big question. Who else from Marvel is in it? It's both Stan and Jack are in it though, right?
well, they've been giving this award since 1990.
Uh-huh.
So early on, it was, all the Disney folk and stuff.
Geez, I haven't even heard of it. I mean, just like a couple years ago, maybe. But then I think that's because they started including companies that they've more recently
Yeah.
taken over.
Yeah. Let's see.
I'm pretty sure Stan is in it, and I'm pretty sure Jack is in it.
Yeah. Like Jonathan Goff and Josh Gads are in it. They did voices for the Let It Go one, the snow one.
Oh,
Frozen.
I was going to say Frost. Yeah, Frozen. That's it. Well,
Yeah.
okay, wait. The one that really got me this time around is Miley Cyrus.
Oh yeah.
Like, is that really the image that you really want to honor? Disney, and I think it got me because on the thing where they showed everybody, she was right next to Steve Ditko, and I said, I never imagined a day when like in something where they're honoring people that right next, Miley Cyrus and Steve Ditko would be right next to each other. You know what I should say right at this moment is that I was reminded by a pretty big comics professional that the first thing that everybody should say is that they're glad that Steve is being honored. I mean, we should remember that despite anything else,
Yeah.
and I admit that that's not the first thing that came out of me. That was the thing about Miley Cyrus. And I should have said it, after all these years of him, taking a back seat to a lot of stuff, there is a certain coolness or that he's finally being honored in a way.
Yeah.
But although he probably would have refused it immediately, the moment.
Absolutely. He definitely would have shown up.
Yeah. Well, that yeah, but I would imagine that he would have written a letter to Disney and said, no, thank you. He might not even have said thank you.
The class of 2019 had Robert Downey Jr., Jon Favreau,
Yeah,
Ming-Na Wen, Diane Sawyer, and James Earl Jones, plus Christina Aguilera.
I have to remember that Ming-Na Wen was the voice of Mulan.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always forget that.
2017 is the biggie. You have Carrie Fisher,
Mm-hmm.
Whoopi Goldberg,
Mm-hmm.
Mark Hamill,
Mm-hmm.
Jack Kirby,
Mm-hmm.
Stan Lee,
Mm-hmm.
and Gary Marshall and Oprah Winfrey.
So I'm assuming that Harrison Ford was already in it before that.
No, he goes in this year.
Oh, why would they have done Carrie and Mark?
Well, I think Carrie had just died.
Okay.
And they were already planning on doing Mark at that point. But I think they moved up Carrie because she had just passed.
Oh, okay. I mean, you would think of those three that Harrison would be first.
Yeah.
Huh. Okay.
But yeah. Yeah, you got Stan Lee, you got Jack Kirby. Steve Ditko makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. I'm
So
assuming that as far as Marvel Comics people, it's just these three so far. Not Marvel movie people, but Marvel Comics people.
yeah,
Okay, well then that makes a lot of sense. Stan and Jack, of course.
and then Steve would be the next.
That's where I would go. I can't imagine anybody else before Steve other than Stan and Jack. It would
Yeah,
have to be Steve next. So in that sense, it does make sense because I saw a lot of people saying it didn't make sense at all, and it's like,
yeah.
well,
No, they're in
no,
there for publishing.
yeah,
Stan's in there for film and publishing, but
yeah,
Jack's in there for publishing.
yeah,
Steve's going in for publishing, and eventually they'll get around to like John Romita, stuff like that.
yeah. I'm not even sure who I would say would come next. I guess John Romita. I'm trying to think of like who created everything. I mean,
Well,
it's
I
those
mean,
three guys, and then I'm not sure where you go. You know,
you could go Wally Wood. You could go Bill Everett.
I'm laughing about Wally Wood. I mean, yeah, that would be kind of incredible. So a guy like Wally Wood in there, a Disney legend, huh? That would be,
True.
yeah. I mean, that would really be something. I mean, I might go so far as to say Joe Simon.
Yeah, I could
You
see that.
know, you know.
Yeah. Maybe
Wow.
get to Steranko.
Uh-huh. I'm thinking of early days Marvel. You have to say who was there early days. Those three guys, and
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if I would say, oh, Don Heck. Don Heck needs to be a Disney legend.
Okay, here's a question. They put in Jack Kirby. What about Joe Simon?
Well, that's what I'm saying, right?
Oh,
I did. That's what I just
yeah,
said.
you're right.
Yeah.
It didn't play. Yeah.
I mean, being that he's the co-creator of Captain America, yeah, you would
Yeah.
think,
Yeah. So the full list going in this year is Colleen Atwood, Angela Bassett, Martha Blandine, James L. Brooks, James Cameron, Jamie Lee Curtis, Miley Cyrus, Steve Ditko, Harrison Ford, Mark Henn, Frank Oz, Kelly Ripa, Joe Rode, and John Williams. I
Okay.
have no idea what Kelly Ripa did. I love Jamie Lee Curtis. Again, I have no idea what she did for Disney. I know
Mm-hmm.
she did some body switch movies when she was younger.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the Halloween franchise is Disney now.
I
A whole new area of the park
I
where
don't think
Michael
so.
Myers comes out.
Yeah. Well, what does it? Because like you said, Steve, it says publishing, right?
Yeah,
What does it say for Jamie Lee Curtis?
film. Just says film.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I'm assuming she's
I
in
hope
some.
Buddy Hackett is in there. If it's a Hall of Fame thing, he was epic in a lot of movies. He was. Buddy Hackett was awesome.
Okay. Well, okay. Dean Jones needs to be in there then, because he was like in every live action Disney movie back in
Or
the
or Kurt Russell
or Kurt Russell, right?
because he did all those
Okay.
young ones.
John Williams absolutely deserves
Oh yeah,
to
hands
be
down.
in
John
there.
Williams.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. That's amazing.
John Williams deserves to be in the Baseball Hall of Fame. If you have a Hall of Fame, you induct John Williams.
Yeah.
Just do it, But somebody's just.
Do you know if anybody from Steve's family has made any sort of statement?
I haven't seen anything.
Okay. Because there's his nephew, I think, is the main guy.
Mike says, I actually think Halloween was under one of Disney's other film companies' Dimension. That'd be interesting.
Okay. It's got to be for something else, though. I mean, she was probably in other, movies. I guess there's such a thing as a Ditko estate, although
Yeah.
I don't know what he ended up owning at the end of his life, He was still publishing stuff. I mean, I know that, so I can only assume there's something to do with the estate. But it because everybody was saying like, oh, Steve would have refused it. Steve wouldn't have wanted that. Steve would have, asked to for them to go to hell. But I'm curious to know what anybody in his family, would have to say about, if they say anything at all about it. I assume there's a ceremony.
Steve Ditko's nephew Mark, when asked for reaction to the news, said, "What would my uncle think about this award? Anyone who really knew him would know the answer to that question without hesitation.
Yeah.
Bluntly, he wouldn't let it even ever so slightly break his stride or influence him in any way. He
Yeah.
didn't do what he did for awards or status or fame. He
Mhm.
was motivated by his own passion to do what he loved, and he didn't need anyone to tell him whether or not he accomplished it."
Okay. That's a good statement. I like that.
Yeah, because he's
That's
not saying don't give it to him.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's kind of even-handed. It's not like hell no, we won't go or anything like that, but it does pretty much state, that he wouldn't have felt it
Yeah.
was anything.
Yeah. So,
Hmm.
all right, let's talk a little more about Steve, because
Okay.
there's some interesting things to Steve, of course. Okay, let's go back to Spider-Man.
Hmm.
As the story goes, if you listen to Stan Lee, Stan had the idea for a character that he called Spider-Man. Um, he went to Jack Kirby. Kirby started designing the character, and Stan didn't like how Kirby was drawing him because Kirby draws everybody, these big muscular people. He
Mm-hmm.
wanted Spider-Man to be more slim teenager because he was going to basically make him a teenager. So he told Jack, "You got too much on your plate. Don't worry about it." And he ended up going to Steve Ditko, who then designed the costume. The costume is completely different than what Jack was working
Mm-hmm.
on. But and in the past, the Kirby family has claimed that it was Jack that had the original idea. It
Yeah.
was kind of a takeoff of his character, the Fly, that he had done for Archie's Red Circle comics.
Yeah.
And
There's another character too, Jack claimed that he said if Stan brought it up, then Jack said, "Oh, well, that reminds me of the blah blah blah
yeah,
it might even been Joe Simon that we were working on at one point. So let's work with that." And it was called something like the Silver Spider, or I can't even remember.
Silver
Um,
Scarab.
no, not the Silver Scarab. That's DC. No, I think it was like the Silver Spider. But anyways, yeah, it's kind of a convoluted thing.
Yeah.
It's that old who came up with the idea first, and Stan has always claimed that he got he had the idea, but they think it was that Stan might have known about the attempt at the previous character, maybe forgot about it, maybe not, but he's always taken the credit for it. No surprise.
But that's the problem, is that he was also in a situation where the company was owned by his uncle, and his
Mhm.
uncle told him, made him the face of the company
Mm-hmm.
because that way he could hang on to all the rights to stuff.
Yep. Yep.
So Stan was doing the job that he was told to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And
but
and Stan did what Stan did best. That
yeah,
was
he was the spokesman, the shill,
he's the barker. He's the guy, standing on the street with a paddle and the ball and saying, come on in and see the show. Okay, so when Steve came into it, I mean, Steve had never claimed that he came up with the idea, right?
he has said. I just listened to somebody reading one of his essays that he wrote about it.
Mm-hmm.
And he doesn't say he made it, but the way he phrases, he says, if Stan did come in with the idea, What he had was a name and a loose concept with no visuals at all.
Okay. In many ways, that mirrors Batman.
Yeah.
Bob Kane had the name and a very loose concept. He had some visuals, and then Bill Fingers, basically just like started building it all from there and saying, no, it needs to be like, like this. You know what? One thing that Steve should get full credit for, and it's a really important part of this puzzle, is that costume.
Yes.
I mean, that visual that if they threw out everything that Jack did, and probably rightfully so, that costume to this day is still,
Iconic.
and it's genius.
Yep.
The design, and that's what always gets me, that every time that Marvel plays around with it or in any sort of way, it's like, no, it's perfect the way it is, and it's timeless as far as
they always go back to it.
Always, yeah, always.
It's like the hot toy I have of Spider-Man is in the Ditko version, which was the black and red. And that's what a lot of people seem to forget, is Ditko designed it as black and red.
Yeah.
In those days, blue was just a highlight color because you had to make it stand out.
That's what happened with Batman, is that the highlight grew bigger and bigger and bigger until it became that it was blue with black shadows. Same exact situation with Spider-Man.
Yeah. So, but it's funny because Ditko just quit in the middle of Spider-Man.
Yeah.
They were having a great run on Spider-Man.
Yeah.
He was also doing Doctor Strange, which he got full credit for. Because Stan even said he had no idea what's going on with Doctor Strange. But with Spider-Man, what the work process was typical Stan or Marvel style, which is Stan would give them a plot, a basic paragraph description of what the book should be. Then they'd go off and draw it based on that paragraph, but they were deciding what panels, how many panels per page, the action. They took a synopsis and expanded it out to a story.
Yeah.
Then they would go back and Stan would go in, and sometimes they put notes in the borders and stuff of what the artist was thinking. Jack did this too.
Yeah.
And then Stan would put it in his words.
Yeah.
The difference though is that Jack and Stan seem to be on the same page more often with the story. Stan and Steve differed a lot.
Yeah. If I understand it correctly, Steve was much more invested in his own ideas and would stand up for that. And God loved Jack Kirby, and I certainly do. He, from what I understand, didn't always speak up or push his own thing when maybe he could have. But yeah, there's been examples of what he came up with and Stan went a different way. But I mean, Jack was able to work with Stan for quite a long time, where Steve fairly early on decided he could not work with Stan anymore. Doctor Strange, it makes a lot of sense that was all Steve, because it fits in with a lot of the stuff that he had been doing pre Fantastic Four. He was involved in all of the Atlas, the giant monster things that they did, and all of the more or less supernatural stuff that they did too, as much as they could do under the code at that time. So that it's like no surprise that Doctor Strange came from him.
But also think of this: Ditko was a big believer in something called objectivism. The writings of Ayn Rand.
Yep.
And you'll still hear about this going on now. And a couple big name people are still big fans of that theory. Paul Ryan, who was Speaker of the House for a while, was a very outspoken proponent of Ayn Rand. Zack Snyder is a big fan. He even talked about doing a movie version of The Fountainhead, which is one of Ayn Rand's biggest books.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now, what I'm going to try to boil down objectivism to the basic minimalist.
Okay.
Is you help society by helping yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You make yourself the best you. You don't worry about anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
You know, basically the heroes of that story or that belief don't have flaws.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is black and white to them.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have emotional, they don't weigh things over emotionally. Everything is, like I said, black and white. And you see that as it goes along. Doctor Strange is a very arrogant character,
Mm-hmm.
but that comes from Ayn Rand. That comes from that objectivism belief. You see it carry over into the Question. You see it carried over into Hawk and Dove. Hawk is always ready for battle. He's always the hero. Dove is written much more passive, much more.
He's a pacifist. Yeah, right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The Question, and then even when he got to his own character, Mr. A is exactly what Steve believed in.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem was he was okay with Peter Parker having doubts and flaws.
I was going to say you'd have to be, yeah.
Yeah, he was young.
Yeah.
But from what I understand, he would do these stories where Spider-Man would be swinging and come across a group of protesters and get into an argument with the protesters who are protesting against the war or whatever it is. And Stan's like, that's our market.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not the character we're creating here. Mm-hmm. So Stan would rewrite the suggested dialogue or come up with his own dialogue, which played much more like, yeah, I believe what you guys are saying. Stick to it. Yeah. Much more supportive of that.
Right.
And of the youth movement.
Right.
And that was part of the falling out.
Yep.
Now, when he actually left, Stan tried to make it sound that Steve was upset because of the reveal that Norman Osborn was a Green Goblin.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at the stuff Steve believed, Norman Osborn being Green Goblin made perfect sense. But in this essay that Steve ended up writing and publishing in one of his own comics, he talks about the real fallout between them had to do with credit. He felt that he deserved co-story or plotting credit since he was the one, as in his opinion, was doing most of the work. Stan would give him an idea, the start of an idea, one paragraph, and then Steve would have to decide how to lay it out across the pages, how many panels, what happens in each panel, all this other stuff, then draw it and then give it back. Yeah. And it was the way that Stan put the credits in there that upset Steve, and why, according to Steve, is why he eventually left. Because you don't have, in the way Steve, that whole objectivism thinking is, you don't have to win an argument, but you can't give up on your beliefs. So you can walk away and still be in the right.
Yeah.
And that's what he did.
From part of what I understand also of his beliefs that figures into the idea that he, did not do interviews or whatever, was this thing about the work speaks for itself.
Yes.
That he did not feel a need, to sit there and try to explain it or anything like that. It's like, there it is. Black and white, like you said, there it is in black and white. It is what it is.
Yeah. He wanted the work to speak for himself, but he wanted credit for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah. I guess that's part of it too, the popular story for all those years was that thing about the Green Goblin reveal, that supposedly, I mean, it could be that was something that, true, but Steve supposedly believed that it should be like somebody that we had never seen at all, that it should just literally be, when it was revealed, like it was some random guy off the street kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And Stan felt that was be like sort of cheating the audience or something like that. So
Oh yeah.
I'm sure there was something like that, but okay. It makes me wonder though, because he wrote that essay, many years later. It makes me wonder if there was some revisionism in
Probably.
in that. I mean,
Yeah.
I get it. Stan decided that the way to go was to, have the head guy, and then there was the bullpen, and he did occasionally give plotting credit. He
did start giving Steve plotting credit before he left, but see that the die had been cast at that point.
Yeah.
You will see where it says plotted by, and he got full credit on Doctor Strange.
Mm-hmm.
But Steve still took offense to, like, the term illustrator.
Mm-hmm.
Because to him, an illustrator is just someone who illustrates what you tell them to illustrate.
Mm-hmm.
And he felt he was more involved in creating the story.
Yeah.
But the thing that then comes down is the whole thing. Because, I mean, from there, Steve went to Charlton,
Mm-hmm.
did Blue Beetle, did Captain Atom, The Question, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But they weren't paying much. Mm-hmm. He ended up over at DC where he did Hawk and Dove and
Creeper.
Mm-hmm. But he never lasted long at any place.
Mm-mm.
So, but we come back to the Stan Steve thing, and it's similar to the Stan Jack thing. Is the credit. And we've kind of taken, did Stan get too much credit originally? Yes. But we've kind of turned the wheel to the point now where people are downplaying Stan's role.
Yeah, totally agree with that.
And as much as I respect and love Jack Kirby, because, the influence he had on my life from meeting him when I was a kid, and all of his work and stuff, and the respect I have for Steve Ditko's work and stuff, my simple argument about credit and who did what comes down to the fact is that when Jack and Steve left Marvel, they never had the same level of success.
It's true. It's very true.
Steve designed amazing looking characters that are still being used today.
Yep.
Jack created amazing concepts. The Forever People, the New Gods, Etrigan the Demon, just down the line. Mr. Miracle. Let me finish my thought, and then I'll pull up what Tony said.
Okay, yeah.
But no one ever looks at those stories and say how great the stories are. It's how great the characters are.
Yeah. And
those characters have become better over the years when other people then step in and elaborate on those characters.
Yep, that's very true.
Mm-hmm. Where what Stan and Jack did on Fantastic Four, what Stan and Steve did on Spider-Man, those are celebrated runs that were celebrated at the time and continue to be, where you look back at the Fourth World books that Jack did over there, or you look at the first 5 issues of the Creepers, they're like, okay, they're kind of cool, but it's not great storytelling, or it's not great writing, the dialogue. I mean, visually, they're beautiful books, But all right, let's see what Tony's got to say. Tony says, I was working for Stan as his publicist in 1999. That's awesome, man. I'm glad you're here, man. When Jim McLaughlin and I had a brainstorm, let's see if we can engineer a reconciliation between Steve and Stan. Jim took point and reached out with an impassioned letter. In response, he received a stack of illustrated editorial comments by Steve Hands, regurgitating most of the Libertarian Handbook. As disappointing as it was, one of the illustrations included a new sketch of Spider-Man. As far as the Disney honor goes, he'd appreciate. Okay, maybe he's finishing the thought, but yeah, I can see that. I did hear about them trying to reconcile it. I could see Jim McLaughlin doing that. Jim is just a big sweetheart, and yeah.
I think it was just well, okay. I was going to say it was too far gone at that point, but actually, the day that Steve left Marvel was probably too far gone at that point too.
Yeah,
Steve.
There was one point that Stan talked about maybe trying to get back together and do a book together, and it might have been around that same time. That might have been the story.
Yeah, and Stan wanted to try to reconcile with Jack also.
Yeah, Tony. It when you post it, it cuts it off, and he'd appreciate. So the rest of that message got lost.
There's another one down below that. Do you see it? It's a long message. Got to click. Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's what I was referring to.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I see that now. It's funny. Maybe it's even ironic in a way that what Disney might be sort of honoring Steve for is what made him who he was, and also turned him into a person who just didn't want to talk about anything. If he stuck to his guns. He stuck, with his through line, and in some ways that can be admirable, but it also maybe prevented him from reconciling with Stan or whoever.
Yeah, and I do go back to being 10, 11 years old and reading the bullpen bulletins and wanting to believe everybody got along, and again, meeting Jack Kirby when I was 11 just made it all more real, because this was the nicest guy on the planet. Getting to meet Stan Lee when I was older and getting to tell him about meeting Jack and seeing him start to tear up at the story, or Stan, suppose a friend of mine tells me the story that Stan did show up for Jack's funeral, but he was the last one to walk in, that he sat at the very back and left before anybody really saw him. So
I would have assumed he would have gone to Steve's funeral if there was even if there, I doubt there probably wasn't a funeral.
Did Steve die after Stan?
I would said he would have if he was there to be able to do it, and there was such a thing. I'm sure that he would have.
Okay, this is the rest of Tony's message. As far as the Disney honor goes, I'm sure he'd have appreciated the opportunity to go scorched earth on Disney.
Yeah.
But if he's looking down on the afterlife, he's planning on haunting some corporate bitch. I'm so glad you retyped that, Tony. That's awesome.
Yeah. Maybe he'll be haunting his nephew for what did the nephew say? Which was kind of, the nephew was trying to be nice in a way about what he was saying.
Bob Iger is going to wake up tomorrow morning with a copy of Atlas Shrugged on his nightstand. Yeah. Oh, that would freak me out.
No, it's going to be a Spider-Man doll with the head cut off, like in the Godfather and with the horse, or it's just going to be the Spider-Man head laying there,
Yep. So yeah, I mean, much love to Steve, much love to Jack, much love to Stan.
Yeah.
You know,
Same.
we weren't there.
Same.
We don't know all the inside and outside stuff.
We weren't there. That's really what it comes down to. We weren't there, and we got to enjoy the stuff that they left behind. And then on some level, we can maybe be happy with, Steve getting more recognition, getting some more credit, and all of these guys,
Yeah.
Jack and Bill Finger and Steve, um,
See, I remember quite a few years ago now when Randy Bowen was kind of the big thing with all his statues and little busts that he was making, those little mini busts.
mhm.
And I was collecting them. I started getting them. This was probably 20 years ago. And he put one out of Stan and put one out of Jack. And they were awesome. And I still have them. I've since sold most of the busts,
Mhm.
but I still have the Stan and Jack ones in storage.
Hmm.
But I kept waiting for a Ditko one
Yeah.
because it seemed like the next logical step, you
Yeah.
know? And then wonder, okay, who's going to be next, Making my own little Mount Rushmore of heads there. And it never happened.
He was probably afraid of getting an illustrated, nasty letter from Steve. That's probably what it was.
Yeah. See, now I
Uh,
would do something specifically to get a nasty illustrated
I
letter
know,
from
right?
Steve because I frame it.
It doesn't matter what he says. You just, Steve, please, please insult me. Please write me a nasty letter. Oh
One of
boy.
my favorite lines from Todd McFarlane is he talks about early on in his career, he would send off his work, and just get rejection letter after rejection letter. And he said, but I saved every single one of those. And you know why? Because they all had autographs on them. He says, I've got an awesome collection of autographs now.
I don't think I've ever said this ever in my entire life, but Todd McFarlane's a smart guy.
Yep.
I never imagined a day that I would get to the point where I would say that, but gee, Todd's a smart guy.
Okay, guys. Did we cover everything on Steve and them? I think we.
I think so. Well, quick, favorite Steve Ditko character that's not a Marvel character.
I love the Creeper.
Okay.
I have this bizarre dream
Mhm.
of going over to DC and doing a buddy cop style comic of the Creeper and Etrigan as they have to go into a city in hell to try to find somebody.
Okay.
Because I thought the two of them would be amazing together.
Yeah. I don't care much for what they're doing these days with the Creeper. That for a while they were trying to say that he was literally nuts.
Yeah.
And I never much care for, like, I always liked the thing where he was acting like he was like a demon or whatever when he become the Creeper. My favorite would be still Ted Kord Blue Beetle. After all these years, it's still, I love, and you know what? That's another great design. I love the look of the Blue Beetle outfit.
Yeah. Tony agrees that Bowen could have gotten a Spider-Man sketch too. You know that Blue Beetle was supposed to be in Arrow.
Yeah, I think I did hear that, right?
That was the original plan
Hmm.
for Brandon Routh's character was to be Blue Beetle. But when the heads of DC said, no, we got plans for him. And he ended up becoming the Atom instead.
Okay.
But he was Blue Beetle for all intents and purposes.
Yeah, that's what I'm to understand, that he wasn't much like the Atom. Yeah.
Let's see. Creeper and Etrigan together is the type of deep cut that would appeal to James Gunn.
Yeah.
I could see that.
Yeah, definitely. Well,
yeah. You almost need a third person, though, as a straight man.
Oh my God. I don't know.
even if it's nobody we've ever met before.
Oh, I see
Because
what you're saying. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
you need that
Well, I was
person
gonna
to
say
deal
you'd
with.
have to throw like John Constantine in there or something like that, you know.
I did a pitch years ago with Tone Rodriguez for a creeper story
Hmm.
that I called El Presidente, and Corte Maltese, I think they call it, that island that they always go to.
Yeah.
I have Bruce Wayne, who owns the this news station that Jack Ryder works in, sends Ryder down there because he's got an opportunity to interview the new Presidente of Corte Maltese, who is just a horrible person. But the real reason he does that, Bruce Wayne wants to send the creeper down there to shake things up. And what
Okay.
happens is, while he's trying to interview the president or El Presidente, he gets assassinated. Ryder changes into the creeper, and everybody assumes that he's the one that assassinated the president,
Okay.
and they make him the new president. So the whole idea was that the creeper would become the leader of a um, small South American nation that's main import was cocaine.
And I could just see Bruce's reaction to this whole thing, like, I sent you there,
Yeah.
and this is what happens. Well, Bruce, what did you expect would happen?
Tony says, we were pushing Patrick Wilson's older brother Paul to play Blue Beetle multiverse. Oh, that would be interesting.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
With Patrick Wilson having played Owlman.
Night Owl.
Night Owls. I'm sorry. Yeah.
DC does have
Owlman.
an Owl Man. He's the Batman of Earth 3.
Right. Right. It's been a while since I watched The Watchmen.
Okay. Well, you
Now,
have some
who
homework
watches
now.
Yes. All right, guys. I think we're going to wrap it up there. Thanks for tuning in. Again, if you haven't hit the like and thumbs up buttons or any of those things, please do so. If you're just finding us tonight, please hit the subscribe button. Jim and I come back every Sunday and do this, different topics every week. If you have any ideas of topics, hit me up on Facebook. Let me know, and we might get to it.
Yeah.
We love good conversations like this. So,
Or we might just ignore it, like Steve Ditko.
yep. Let me real quick, Jim. Next Sunday is Easter.
Oh yeah.
I don't necessarily do anything for Easter. Do you?
No, so that's fine actually. Yeah, because yes, I'll be here, but I don't do anything. So yeah, it's cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll talk about characters that come back from the dead.
Yeah, let's be sacrilegious on Easter. Sure. Why not?
I once did a photo shoot on Easter. Twice did photo shoots on Easter.
It depends on what it was that was you were shooting.
Nude models.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So, all right. Good night, everybody. Have a great week, and we'll see you on